There we go. So now that we've introduced everybody, we'll start the class. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can figure it out. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot that it does. Okay. When I first started about thinking about this class, I thought of all kinds of fun names for it. Don't know much about Lent or Lent for Dummies, that kind of thing. So I kind of settled on finding joy in Lent, understanding that this is a soul enriching season, but leading up to Easter. So I hope you find that as the kind of the common theme of this. So we'll go 6 evenings, since there's 6 Sundays in Lent. Seems like a good number. And we're going to talk about kind of 3 things. What Lent is about. What should we as just nice, polite Protestants, what should we think about Lent? Is that something that Catholics used to do? And we'll talk a little bit about spiritual practices that might be useful. We won't get real intense into that, but we'll kind of survey a few things. And we'll look at the lectionary passages each week, see what might be relevant in there. Sound good? Is that what everybody signed up for? All right.
Good.
Well, let's talk about kind of the general idea of what Lent might be for Protestants. That seems to me like it goes way back to the Garden of Eden, actually. Like Adam and Eve, we human people, we tend to refuse to accept boundaries. We tend to think that we can use any resource or any creature that we choose just for our own personal gain or enjoyment. There are times when we have kind of enlightened thoughts and we think we're going to do something good by limiting what we do. But this is kind of our default nature. Just kind of not have a boundary. So if we have no limits, really if you were living in a place like the Garden of Eden, everything is nice and good. There's plenty of food. It's nice and warm all the time, just like being in Hawaii. And there wouldn't be any reason for you to even know that there was a God, much less that you needed him. So you would not recognize God's sovereignty, so you wouldn't really be a really good Protestant. But by accepting some limits, that allows God to gain access to a room in your life to restore and redirect and heal your body, mind, and spirit. Okay. Now, it could be that you would accept limits just because it's kind of for your own good. You limit how close you get to the edge of a cliff, or you limit how fast you drive, just because it makes sense and you don't want to accept risks. But we're talking about accepting limits intentionally to let God into your life. Because when you make room in your life, it's going to be filled with something. And you want to be intentional about it, make God be what you fill it with. Here's a little visual illustration. Can you pour the blood of Christ, thinking communion here, can you pour that into a glass that's already full of water? I tried getting an image of a water glass that was full to the brim, but this is as close as I got. So it made me think, suppose you pour a little bit the wine into that glass, that's probably going to make you want more. Something more that's undiluted. Okay. So you have to, this is the idea of accepting some limits, leaving part of your glass empty for God to be present. There's another notion. You give up something or you limit something that has been taking up a portion of your life. So you open up a segment of your time. That means God can show you something better. I think this will be a key notion in some of the later weeks. God can show you something better. And if you have any kind of a hard time thinking you can do that, here's a basic axiom that I always try to work this into my classes and sermons. God is sublimely and infinitely beyond human understanding. So often people get into some trouble because they forget this. They kind of implicitly assume in their thinking that somehow God is limited to what we humans can imagine. And that puts limits on our own understanding. It doesn't limit God, really. It just limits us. So good to keep this in mind. So we all know God is love. And when you hear that, you think, well, is that really all God is? Isn't he more than that? And the reason we think that is because we're thinking the love as a human concept. But God is love much more than we can imagine. He can do things, and he will, and he wants to. That's the amazing thing. So I can let God into my life. Isn't that a good thing I could do anytime? You could do that in the summertime or Christmas time, or wait for July, anytime you want. Well, sure, certainly is a good thing you can do. Well, then why now? Why this particular season? Well, okay, there is another factor in this. Easter is coming. Okay, Easter is kind of the anchor for Lent. Easter is part of God's plan, which means it's beyond our comprehension. So when you got Palm Sunday and the triumphal entry and the washing of feet, the institution of the Lord's Supper, the arrest of Christ, the crucifixion, the penitent thief on the cross there, the burial, resurrection, ascension, all this going on. It's you can't pretend that you're going to humanly understand what all that means. You can try a lot, and you'll get pretty good ways, but there's a whole lot more. This would be a good season of listening to the Holy Spirit teaching you. So a season of that is priceless. So I'm thinking that's what Lent is about. Lent is the season of preparation for letting God into your life to prepare you to better understand Easter. Okay. Good so far? Any
That was good.
all right. But wait a minute. There's some more thought. Back on Ash Wednesday, you heard this. You heard that you were dust, and to dust you're going to return. That sounds a little dire. In Reformed theology, we got the depravity of man. You don't even need to be too schooled in Reformed theology. You've got Paul talking about how we've all fallen short of the glory of God. So yes, we've got mortality and death and depravity and fallen nature of humanity. these are all backdrops in our life. And we're frequently reminded of these things, right? So I think what this does is it tells us why it's important to let God into your life. Because we got these things. We're just blades of grass. We're going to wither and blow away. Okay. So why is it? That's why it's important. But there's another thing. This is kind of what I preached about a couple of weeks ago. We got the law of Moses in the Old Testament and all of our history that tells us we do a pretty darn poor job of keeping these commandments. We don't really keep any of them. Sermon on the Mount, Jesus comes along and says, wait a minute. Those commandments, they're really just baby steps. The standards in the kingdom of God are really much higher. If you think you're doing the right thing by keeping those 10 commandments, you're missing a lot. So Lent can help you recognize that we got this dire situation, but we got Emmanuel, his gifts of salvation, deliverance, redemption, all those good things. And because of that, that helps us understand that Easter is coming. But when we hear Christ is risen, he is risen indeed, you should be jumping out of your skin. Does anybody know who this lady on the left is? I don't really know who that is. I imagine that, Mary Magdalene, when she discovered that this guy that she thought was the gardener was really the risen Christ, she must have looked about like that.
So,
No.
Michael, she's with MSNBC. I think she used to have a morning business. She's a specialist in business, and I don't remember her name.
Okay.
The Dow must have been up that day.
Must have been. Something great was going on. I don't know if you can see it completely, but on the other side, a couple of ladies and friends are jumping up and down. So back to our summary, the general idea of what Lent is about for Protestants. It's a season of preparation for letting God into your life to prepare you for better understanding Easter and appreciating it, being grateful for it. Okay. Well, that's kind of all I want to do tonight for talking about what the nature of Lent is. Next week, I think I'm going to have another slideshow, gets more into the history of it. Where it comes from, why, what Lent is, where it comes from, why now, who thought this up. Let's talk a little bit about spiritual practices. I haven't really built that into the plan for tonight, but we got a little bit of time. Yeah, we got lots of time. Well, here's one right here. I don't know if you can really see this. You might have to see if you can move your pictures of people out of the way. This was a labyrinth that was set up in the prayer room at the General Assembly when it was in Portland back in 2016. Eileen Parfrey, that some of you know, she's now a retired pastor, and she was working with the Franciscan Spiritual Center and brought this labyrinth, kind of a carpet from them, had it in the prayer room. I got to volunteer, so I got to kind of tell people about the labyrinths. And Eileen had a bunch of other little things set up, little craft things, and places where you can just come and pray. So anyway, here's a labyrinth. So labyrinth is, as you can see, it's kind of a pathway. You go in and you're starting out with really good intentions, so you start moving toward the center, which represents the presence of God. But you get the distractions and worries and all those things, and it moves you away from that center space, and you wander around for a while. You get pretty close to it, but then other distractions lure you away. You get back toward the outside. Frustrations get you out there. But eventually, through sheer perseverance, you wind up in the middle, and you can spend some time there. Then you return by the same path. Just come back out and serve the world with what you have learned from experiencing God's presence. And now you've got Christ with you in that way. So it kind of takes the place of a pilgrimage. You don't have to go to Jerusalem or Spain or Canterbury or any of those places. Yeah, you can just do it here. Some places where you can find a labyrinth. In the latest newsletter from the Presbyterian, there was a picture of the one in Newburgh, First Presbyterian Newburgh. They had a bunch of students from George Fox help them build this. So that looks pretty nice. It's going to take some maintenance, apparently. But it looks like a good one. And there's a beautiful one up at the Grotto in Portland, that very Catholic place. We went there one day for orientation when I went to seminary. And I found this labyrinth. So I had thought that a labyrinth was something you did just all by yourself. You didn't want anybody else there, but there were a lot of people there that day, and they were walking around, and it actually added another element to it. Because you're going to meet people along the way in any kind of pilgrimage, and just like you do in life. And if you meet somebody coming the opposite way, you can just kind of step aside and let them by, and then step back in. Or you can stay where you step to and see where it leads you. So if you come up, if somebody comes up behind you and they're going faster than you can step aside and let them pass. Just it works. It's actually nice when there's other people doing it. So, well, we'll talk more about spiritual practices next week. I tend to spend more time. But I thought I would give you a homework assignment tonight. Okay, homework. Ready? You don't have to buy a book for this class, but there might be homework. Whoop, where, oh my gosh. I pushed the wrong button.
Michael, homework is okay. I just want to know if we have to worry about tests.
No, you don't have to worry about tests. We'll just talk about it. We'll get there. Okay. There's stories in the Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels, where Jesus asked people, "What do you want me to do for you?" There's a story in Matthew, Mark, and Luke about Jesus healing a blind man. And here are the three passages. I hope you can see them. If you look, it's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They're all the same story, except there's little different variations in all three of them. So I think this is a good example of when you read scriptural text, to look for the small things. What might the Spirit be saying in these different accounts? Now, sometimes when you're in a meeting, a church meeting or something, and you don't want just to go by the majority rule of things. Whenever anything really important comes up, you need to look at the margins. People that are in the minorities, what are they saying? What are they seeing? Because, if the Spirit's speaking to somebody, there might just be one person hearing. So you need to listen carefully before you make decisions, even though the majority might have a point of view. And in an instance like this, where you got the same story in 3 different times, you can learn a lot by looking at the little differences. There are at least a couple really good and very important, but looking small differences in the accounts here. So that's the assignment. Read these accounts, see what little differences you find, and what might that mean. Okay. I'm good. Of course, it's homework, and this is a church class, so you don't really have to do it. But it would be a whole lot better if everybody did. And we'd have a whole lot more productive conversation. So there you are.
So are we supposed to journal this? Are we supposed to write something? How are we going to prove we did it?
You'll know our discussion, Jane.
Yeah, just for discussion. We'll talk
Well,
about
I can't remember anything, so how's that going to help? I mean,
it. Well, I recommend you write something down then.
give me some 3x5 cards or something.
I think, Jane, I think you should negotiate with Michael during the week about how to manage the
Maybe I could see what he's writing and cheat, look over his shoulder or something.
Yeah, you might do that.
His opinion may be different than yours.
Oh, no. So you're saying there's no right or wrong answer? Is that right?
Well, that's pretty much right. Can you all see what these passages are? Matthew 20,
Yep.
29
Yes.
to 34.
Yeah.
The one you might have a hard time seeing was Luke 18, 35 to 43.
So is this the one, I don't know how many blind men stories there are, but is this the mud one or is this something else?
This is, I think the Mark version is Zacchaeus.
Huh?
Is that Mark? Yeah, one of those.
You'll have to read it, Jane.
Yeah.
But he wasn't blind, was he? Or is this a different kind of
Oh,
blind?
Bartimaeus, excuse me.
Oh,
Bartimaeus.
okay. I was good.
Some of my guys confused.
Ah, so all these are blind Bartimaeus.
More or less. There are differences. Let's stop sharing for just a minute. So, any comments or questions or inspirations so far?
Well, I have to say, when you had that listing of all the stuff that is involved with Lent, I was sort of blown away. That listing of what, washing feet, what was that listing of stuff? I mean, there was about 6 or 8 things, and I thought, oh my gosh.
Well, all the things that happened during Passion Week.
Yeah.
And
That was kind of like, I don't think I've ever seen them all like listed like that. That was kind of informative.
glad to be of service.
You are actually doing something up there, huh?
Yeah.
So, Michael, so you know who that young lady was that was cheering so on the left-hand side of the picture. Her name is Stephanie Ruhle, R-U-H-L-E. And she is a senior, now reading from the internet, she is a senior business analyst for MSNBC, and most recently the host of the 11th Hour.
Huh.
And she is, now we don't get MSNBC anymore, but she was a traditional favorite because she's usually upbeat, like not as upbeat as that picture of her cheering, but she's usually got a pretty positive attitude and enjoyable to watch. I did want to mention that it's hard to discern but Kenilworth Presbyterian Church has a labyrinth
Oh,
that was created out in front of the church building. It was done when the church was diverting its downspouts and created a dry well underneath.
Hmm.
So underneath the pavers is a dry well to handle stormwater, but on top of it is a labyrinth. It's in square form, not in the one from the cathedral in France. So, but it's one of the issues is that the different color of pavers is not very pronounced. And so it takes a discerning eye to stay on the path.
Well, another element.
Yeah,
yeah.
there is a society of, that, or a group of people that has charted all the labyrinths in the greater Portland area, and they came by one day because they'd heard of that. And the one at the grotto served as a model for our son Jonathan, who has a place in Vancouver. He recreated that one in pavers at the back of his house, and it's maybe 1/10, 1/4 version of that. So labyrinths are around us.
Yeah, there are different models, but same basic idea.
Mhm.
And
Well,
and if you stay on the path, you won't get lost. It's not a maze.
right. Yeah, it's not
Not a
a
maze.
puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
You do get there if you stay on the path.
There's also a nice one at Manuka.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've done that one.
Yeah.
Oh, Springwater Presby in Estacada has one out back in their backwoods.
Mhm.
Ooh, that'd be pretty.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, one of our church members sent me a couple of weeks ago, asked me if I'd ever heard of the walking labyrinths, circles in the sand in Bandon. I don't know. I never heard of this, but it looks absolutely fabulous.
Was it a temporary thing?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
I
temporary.
guess. Yeah, I guess I don't know much about it, but I sure like to find out because I guess the artists go down. Oh, do you know, Becky, about it or?
Well, the man that does it, and I have a schedule for this summer. So what I can
Oh.
do is I can get that out and send it to Michael and he can share it with everyone.
Wow.
He creates the labyrinth in the sand. And then people appear, some of them help him do it and they use it. And then the tide comes in and erases it.
Hmm.
And he does it maybe 15, 20 times a summer.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that the schedule is based upon tides.
Hmm.
Yeah.
He needs enough time to create it so people can use it before the tide comes in. So,
That looks just fabulous to me.
yeah, I've seen videos of him doing it. I have not been down there. That's on my bucket list. But yeah, it does. It
Put
looks
some sand
fabulous.
in your bucket.
I'll put some sand in my bucket.
Yeah, if you'd send that schedule along, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll get it.
We have a bunch of Presbyterians swarming it, you know. Do we have a Presbyterian flag we can?
Yes,
Maybe like the Crusaders or
The official
something.
seal. Yes, we'll have to wear the t-shirts, huh?
Yeah. We're taking over.
Well, I picked on labyrinths because that was a picture I found that I could use on publicity for this. But also, it's an example of a spiritual practice that actually has a physicality to it.
Yeah.
You can actually get up and move, whereas most things are just kind of sitting quietly and having a prayer time, something like that. So we'll talk about a lot of those things next time. Well, one more thing I wanted to do tonight, if I can share my screen again. If I can find it. There it is. What's going on? There. I wanted to look through the different lectionary passages, and we've got two units this week. We got Ash Wednesday and the first Sunday. So let's see, maybe first I should actually show you. Show you an outline of what our program is here, if I can find that. Where'd that go? Huh. Oh, there it is. Okay, here's the lectionary readings. Okay, outline for this class. Well, this is tonight, week 1, basic understanding of Lent, and some passages from these 2 times. Next week, we'll get more into the history and more into spiritual practices, and then we'll just have 1 week of lectionary passages. The 3rd week, I thought I'd have a good time and talk about Saint Benedict, the rule of Saint Benedict, rule number 49 is all about how to observe Lent. So I thought I'd give you an example of kind of the ultra Catholic Lent. So just kind of see what you think of that. Then we'll get into a little bit of Lectio Divina, what it's about. I think I'm going to give you the classic formula. There's a lot of variations of it around, but the classic is the best. They're all variations on that. Then we'll get into more talking about Lent, what boundaries do for you. And we'll talk about and examine. The 5th week, we'll do more about boundaries. We're talking about an example of an examine I came across a few months ago that I think is really delicious. And week 6, we're going to really have a good time and talk about the cloud of unknowing. This is one of the most amazing things that you'll ever come across. So I thought, why not work again? So that's what we're doing. So tonight, the lectionary readings, Ash Wednesday and first Sunday, here they are. And now we can get to them. Let's see, where are they? Here they are. So the first one is about Joel. Joel is one of these really gorgeous little minor prophets that you read these and you say, holy smokes, wow, this is amazing. This is actually in the Old Testament. People back in the Old Testament, they really had some of them were really quite inspired. So this passage from Joel starts out talking about so the day of the Lord is coming. This is the time of judgment. The Lord has taken Israel to the woodshed. He's got some punishment for them. But then he says, even now, says the Lord, return to me with all your heart, fasting, weeping, mourning. Rent your heart, not your clothing. And return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, relenting from punishment. These are all things that God described himself when he talked to Moses back in Exodus. Who knows, he might turn and relent and give us a blessing. So, blow a trumpet in Zion, declare a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people. No, let's honor God the way we're supposed to. That's the kind of prophet that Joel was. Okay, so sound like Lent? Yeah, Joel, I think, was inspired some Lent. By the way, the readings for Ash Wednesday are always the same, all 3 years of the lectionary. The ones for the other Sundays in Lent differ. between the 3 years, but Ash Wednesday is always the same. There's Isaiah 58. Our pastor in Salem picked on this for the what he majored in on the Ash Wednesday. It says here, announce to the people that they've been rebellious. They might not have even known it, but they were. That all the fasts they've been doing, all the fancy things, they've just been serving their own interests. And meantime, they oppress their workers, they quarrel, they fight, they just don't do things very well. They bow down and they put on ashes and sackcloth and they make a really good look of things. But you know, they're just serving their own interests, really. And he says, "Is not this the fast that I choose? Loose the bonds of injustice, undo the straps of the yoke, let the oppressed go free. You know, feed the hungry, house the homeless, clothe the naked. You know, do those things. And then you should call, and the Lord will answer. If you cry for help, He will say, 'Here I am.'" You know, they were saying up a little, up in verse 3. Why do we fast, but you don't see? God doesn't see. Why humble ourselves, but God doesn't seem to notice? Well, here's why. And if you do these things, God will answer. He will notice you. He will say, "Yes, I know you." There's that passage where Jesus says that there will be people who said, "Lord, Lord," but He says, I don't know you. No. There's a proper way to address Him. Does that sound like Lent? It actually sounds a lot like Matthew 6, which was also for Ash Wednesday, where Jesus says, you know, don't be real showy about how you do fast and give alms and how you pray. Don't do it just for your own credit. You know, do it quietly because it's between you and God. And there's that element to Lent. It's mostly an individual thing, you and God, but we do a lot of it in community. We show up on Ash Wednesday and get ashes on our foreheads. And we're saying we're supporting one another in this effort.
You know, I don't really see the blowing of the trumpet and all this. Well, I'm not very articulate, but all this happy stuff, I associate that more with Easter. Lent seems to be a little more depressing. You know, are you supposed to give up something?
Well, we'll talk about that.
You know, that's, you know, where I grew up, it was like, Lent, what's that, or are we supposed to deprive ourselves? And I don't know. I don't think of Lent as being a real woo, you know. No, well, you know, like Fat Tuesday, you're supposed to stuff yourself because now you're going to be not doing stuff. I mean, I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras, that's your last chance to do things that you're going to have to give up the next day.
Yeah.
Well, the blowing of the trumpet is not too much in celebration. It's to gather the people. You know, it's like
To do good things.
well, to assemble.
To assemble. Well, that's what I mean, to assemble. You know.
I have this will probably sound strange, but I'm reading, I always get this guy's name wrong. So I'm gonna, Christine, help me out here. Abraham
Heschel.
Thank you. I'm reading his book on the Sabbath, and I'm reading it slowly because it seems to be the right way. But one of the comment he makes about the Sabbath is that the Sabbath is not a preparation for the week. The week is a preparation for the Sabbath. And so in part, I'm thinking what you're telling me, Michael, is that Lent is a time certainly for contemplation and things like that, but it's really a time for preparation. It's a time for preparing yourself, and by discipline, by thinking things through, by the scriptures you read, and so forth. Is that right? I don't know. Okay.
Preparing yourself with a lot of help from the Spirit to understand Easter better. Well, here's Psalm 51 was another reading for Ash Wednesday. And it's the penitence of David after Nathan let him know that he was guilty. So he confesses all his transgressions and sins. And he asks God to create a clean heart in me, put a new and right spirit. So there's a contrition element of Lent, of course. It's mostly famous for that verse there. 2 Corinthians is also a part of the Ash Wednesday. Again, I think Paul here is saying that he's entreating people to let God be in your life, be reconciled to God. That's what he came for. That's why Jesus was among us. But let's see, this is where he mentions Paul lists a lot of things he's been able to do because of Christ's salvation, because he has Christ with him. He's been able to get through all these afflictions and hardships and calamities, beatings, imprisonments, riots, labors. Oh, this goes on and on. With the weapons of righteousness, okay? We're treated as imposters, and yet we're true. We're treated as unknown, and yet we are well known. We're treated as dying, and look, here we are alive. We're punished, but yet we're not killed. We look sorrowful, yet we're always rejoicing. We're poor, yet we're making many rich. We have nothing, but yet we possess everything. Everything that matters anyway. So it gives you an idea. It's good to participate in Lent. It gives you a whole different perspective of what's important. There's the Matthew thing from Ash Wednesday. When you give alms, don't sound a trumpet, like the hypocrites do. They get praise. They've gotten their reward. When you give alms, don't let your left hand know what your right's doing, so that your alms may be done in secret. Your Father sees that. He's the one that you want to reward you. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites and do it on the street corners and stuff. Go to your room and shut the door. Father will see and will reward you. Whenever you fast, don't look somber. Walk around, big frown on your face. Oh, I'm so fasting. And they'll get a reward. So he's saying, this is important. There's something important between you and God. Help each other along the way if you can, but really, it's mostly between you and God. You're not rewarding each other. Now we get to the first Sunday of Lent today. The first reading is the temptation in the garden. The temptations here are the same as the temptations that that Jesus endured in the wilderness. They're basically the same. Eve and then also Adam, they didn't do very well when they were tested. They didn't recognize any boundaries. Whereas Jesus, of course, passed the test. And you probably heard sermons this morning about this, but Psalm 42 is David. This is the sequel to the Psalm 51 that we read a minute ago. This is also from David. Now he's expressing great joy at being forgiven. Okay. Happy are those who are forgiven, whose sin is covered. Happy is those whom the Lord imputes no iniquity. While he kept silent, while he didn't fess up to anybody, his body wasted away. Day and night, he felt God's hand was heavy on him. Okay, that's a whole bunch of selahs. I think the best interpretation I've heard of selah is just pause and soak this in for a while. Other great interpretation was to stop for a minute and let the harp player go for a while. Then David says, I acknowledge my sin to you. I did not hide my iniquity. I said, I will confess to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Wow. Selah might mean, wow. Whoa. Thank you, Lord. Therefore, let all who are faithful offer prayers to you in time of distress. Oh, the rush of mighty waters won't reach them. You are the hiding place. So it goes on, as only David can do. Okay. Many are the torments of the wicked, but steadfast love surrounds those who trust in the Lord. Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, O righteous. Shout for joy, all you upright in heart. Gives you a clue of all the joy that can come from observing Lent. Let the Spirit kind of guide you through it. Confess your sins to Him, and you can feel the kind of joy that David did. Romans 5. Let's see, what was this about? Sin and death came into the world. We all seem to face the same kind of situation that Adam and Eve did, and we tend to face it with the same kind of arrogance. Okay. But Paul says, accepting Christ into your life makes all the difference. Okay. This is how you find life. Accepting Christ into your life by God's grace gives justification on life. Paul is one of the most intelligent guys that ever lived. I think he had a lot to say. And I think our interpretations of what Christ meant, we owe a lot to him. And this is one of the passages that we look at. I think this idea of contrasting Adam and Christ, I think that we get that from Paul. It's kind of interesting idea. Adam was kind of a type that we all follow. We all share his humanity. Then Christ comes along, we also share his humanity. And he showed what we can do. And when we keep God in our life, let the Spirit in.
Michael, could I interject a note here?
Sure.
In the reading from Romans, by the way, Paul never said, don't say in one sentence what you can say in 30.
Yeah.
And today, of course, at my age, repetition is good, but he says this about it, the second Adam, about as many times in as many ways as you can configure the sentence. But that said, this scripture also points to a different theory of the cross. It is pretty common from a couple hundred years ago to look at the cross was punishment for sin. That's a theory of the cross, and that Jesus bore God's anger and paid the price. And I use those terms too. But Paul frames it here in terms of disobedience and perfect obedience. And so that Christ's faithfulness to the cross is our redemption. It isn't an act of God being mad at Jesus or mad at the world or whatever. It is that obedience and faithfulness is the key to reconciliation, and that Jesus embodied that, perfected it, incarnated that. So this passage here, in addition, like I say, to being a bit run on, points to a different way of looking at what Christ was doing.
Yeah. Well, that's precious. Yeah, like I was before, the whole idea of any of that is just, there's so much more to understand than I think any of us can. I think in seminary, I must have heard a couple of dozen different explanations of what crucifixion was for. All of them good. Thanks, Dave. There's the message. That's the last one. Look at. Okay, Christ goes into the wilderness. He's led by the Spirit into the wilderness. He's there for 40 days, 40 nights. By the way, it doesn't say the Spirit ever left him. It was a time of training for him, how to kind of get through the next few years of his ministry. When the tempter comes and says, if you are the Son of God, well, this comes right after the baptism. So God has already proclaimed him to be his son, and he's well pleased with him. So that's not really the question. He's saying, since you are the Son of God, how about doing something relevant here? How about making these stones loaves of bread? Boy, everybody's going to love that. You're going to be a real humanitarian when you do this. And Jesus essentially says that it'd be nice to feed everybody, but the word of God is a whole lot more important. The devil comes and says, well, let's take you up a little higher. Let's take you up to the top of the holy city. Throw yourself down there. Everybody will some angels will come and catch you. Well, Jesus essentially says, I don't want people to idolize me for that kind of reason. High mountain, look at all the nations of the world. Satan offers them all to him as though they were his to offer. Jesus really is the Lord of it all anyway. But, he's basically saying here, well, if we team up together, we'll make you the emperor of Rome, and you can control the world and do lots of good things. And Jesus is saying, well, no, you worship the Lord your God, serve him, do it his way. And that's what we're going to do. So devil left and angels came and waited on him. I listened to some sermons about this week, and some of them said, well, why didn't the angels come sooner? I don't know. Wouldn't be as much of a test, and Jesus wouldn't have learned as much about how to manage himself. Any more thoughts on this one? This time in the wilderness is quite a thing. We don't know where his wilderness experience was. If it really was out in the desert, or was he just kind of a spiritual wilderness? Was he just kind of spending some time on retreat? Was he fasting somewhere? Well, we don't know, but that doesn't matter. He was in a wilderness.
Hebrew word for wilderness is translates to the place of speaking.
Place of speaking.
The place of speaking.
Huh.
And so people hermits go to the desert, whatever, to hear what is being spoken. And so Jesus in the wilderness was in a place where he was, you could say a thin space where both God and evil personified as the devil were speaking. And God through Jesus spoke as well.
All right. Well, that's what I had for tonight.
That's really a lovely picture that you just gave us about both the voices speaking and a place where you can go to hear and listen.
Yes, if we're in community with other people and things, they seem to drown out the voice of God. And you need to get away from all the distractions, including your cell phone.
Okay, one more thought. Following the readings from Matthew, God has declared Jesus as God's son. So God said to Jesus, "This is who I say you are." And then immediately the Spirit led him or drove him into the wilderness where the devil said, "Now who do you say you are?" So it was a time of discovery where Jesus was challenged. Okay, we know what God said about who you are. Now, who do you say you are? And it was a time of discovery and discernment for Jesus as he began that next part of his earthly ministry. There's my sermon for this morning, by the way. Who do we say we are? And how do we discover and reveal who we are? So you all get credit for a couple worship services today. 3 actually, counting Michael. That mean, can we take the next 3 weeks off, Michael?
Yeah.
I'll give you permission.
No way.
No homework.
No.
Oh dear.
Well, I didn't think to start us out with prayer, so we should probably
And
end with one. So let me do that. Oh, dear Lord, thank you for this precious time, for the people that made an effort to join in tonight. Ask that you keep your will, your spirit, and close to us, and help us to follow. Give us by your grace, give us the will to help the Spirit, or to listen to the Spirit, to find the guidance that you would have for us. Help us, Lord, to understand the meaning of the season, to bring the kind of joy to our lives that you have for us. Lord, your plans are always for our good, not for our punishment or those. Lord, we seek your will in all things. In Jesus' precious name. Amen. Okay, well, come back next week, same time. Other people can come join, of course. I don't think it hurts to jump in the middle. So there you are.
I have a piece of random information. My mind goes all over the place, and I thought, what does Lent, the word, actually mean? I'm like, huh.
Well, I'm saving that for the history part next week.
Ah!
Now you have to come back.
Well, what I had wasn't particularly historic, but I like it. Oh, okay. I'll keep my mouth shut. I'll probably forget by next week anyway, so.
I'll give you a little teaser. It's kind of a Germanic root, that, like the lengthening of days.
Oh, no, there's the answer. Oh, no.
Yeah, the days are getting longer during the season.
You know, I really like that. That helps me because it's like, so next week it'll probably be what, 10 minutes lighter or something. And that is so hopeful to think about.
Yeah.
You know, and you could probably get somewhat spiritual about talking about lengthening your understanding of things, or, you know, I'm sure you can somehow.
Here's a question to ponder. What does that mean in the global South? 'Cause the days are getting shorter.
Well,
That's funny you mentioned that, because Mike was talking about how the moon would be upside down. What was it?
if you look at the moon in the southern hemisphere, it's upside down from the way we see it. It is. If you look at, take a globe and imagine somebody standing on the globe in the northern hemisphere and looking at the moon, and imagine a guy standing in the southern hemisphere and looking at the moon. So he's kind of upside down in relation to us. So when he looks at the moon, what looks like the top to him looks like the bottom to us.
Okay.
So,
I got to work on that one.
They need a different word for Lent. That's what they need.
yeah, they do. Whole different concept.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's interesting. Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye,
Michael.
everybody.
Thank you, Michael.
All
Good
right.
night. See you next week.
Yeah.
See ya.
So,
Bye.
same,
Bye-bye.
same Zoom link will work.